Thank you to the Ring Out Bell Choir for that musical piece, which was made with love and in remembrance. I'd like to welcome you to this space of remembrance, this place to hold your grief, your tears, and your joy as you remember a life well lived and a person well loved. If this is your first time in a Unitarian Universalist congregation, we want you to know that we are a part of the congregational Protestant lineage of Christian churches, but more than a century ago, we decided that we'd rather build our religious community on the promises we make and how we respect and treat each other rather than on a single uniformity of belief. As a non-creedal community, we honor religious wisdom and truth wherever we find it, in the great religious traditions of the world, as well as within our own hearts and our own experiences. When we grieve, we use our memorial services as occasions to celebrate the life of our loved one, rather than as an occasion for a proclamation of faith, because a life well lived is a proclamation of faith. We honor the fact that each of us here has brought our own spiritual understanding of the mysteries of life and death, and will find consolation in those understandings as we work our way through our loss. We know very well that death is an inevitable part of our lives. We know as we learn to love one another that eventually our love includes grief and loss. Because no matter how lucky we are, no matter how long we live, saying goodbye, it comes to each of us. All of our knowing, it doesn't make it any easier. The final farewells always come at a loss for which we somehow feel ourselves unprepared. Being human, we rage against the dying of the light, as Dylan Thomas writes. Do not be perplexed if you're feeling rage or other emotions now. Be present to them. Accept them. They are doorways to life's deeper understandings. So let us gather this day, summoned by respect and affection, to demonstrate our love for both the living and the dead. Let us gather to comfort one another, for we have suffered a great loss. Let us gather also with love and gratitude to celebrate the blessing of having our lives touched by Carole. May peace pervade this space today and the hearts of all who gather herein as we invoke the spirit of life and love in which we live, move, and have our being to be with us in this hour as we give thanks for the life of Carole Richardson.
We light this chalice in loving memory of our friend and spiritual companion, Carole Richardson, and in tribute to the love a single life can inspire. May the chalice remind us of the extravagant gift of life given to each of us. May it signify the unity we create in our being together and our sharing together. May it honor the mystery and gifts of life.
If You Come Softly by Audre Lorde. If you come as softly as the wind within the trees, you shall hear what I hear, see what sorrow sees. If you come as softly as threading dew, I will take you gladly, nor ask more of you. You may sit beside me, silent as a breath. Only those who stay dead shall remember death. And if you come, I will be silent, nor speak harsh words to you. I will not ask you why now, or how, or what you do. We shall sit here, softly beneath two different years, and the earth between us shall drink our tears.
The details of a person's life story can never encompass the many meanings and truths of that life, but the details are a place to begin. Lena Carole Richardson was born at home on the 6th of July, 1942 in Cisco, Texas. She was the second child and only daughter of Jay and Lily Watson Richardson. Her older brother, Travis, died in infancy. She and her younger brother, Mark, grew up in Cisco. Their parents owned a grocery store, and her father was a meat cutter. After graduating high school, Carole attended Cisco Junior College and then Texas Women's University, majoring in biology and intending to become a research scientist. She worked for several years in research labs at MD Anderson Hospital in Houston and later at Georgetown University. At Georgetown, Carole changed her focus to dentistry. She graduated from Georgetown Dental School, one of two women among 140 graduates in 1976. Carole practiced general dentistry in the DC area for over 40 years, earning the love and respect of thousands of loyal patients and of her colleagues. Carole and Carolyn met in 1980. After 33 years of being together, they were formally married at Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church on October 19th, 2013. Carole and Carolyn started attending Cedar Lane in the early 1990s. Carole was actively involved as a member and lay leader for many years and generously supported Cedar Lane with her time, energy, and gifts. She served on the board, the personnel committee, taught religious education for many years, the Haunting House program, the Our Whole Lives OWL for high school and middle school youth, volunteered at the auction and the rummage sale, and rang bells as a member of the Ring Out Bells choir. Carole and Carolyn were also longtime members of the dinner discussion group. Carole's volunteerism extended beyond Cedar Lane. She provided free dentistry at Mary's Center, sponsored a women's softball team, the Masticators, and served as chair of the Professional Standards Committee of the DC Dental Society. Carole loved dogs, and dogs. She enjoyed hiking, boating, traveling, and making music. She loved to read and to cook and to eat hot, spicy food. Carole was diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2016, then later with multiple system atrophy, a rare neurodegenerative disease. Carole died peacefully at home on March 17, 2021, with her beloved Carolyn at her side. She was 78. Carole is survived in death by her wife of 42 years, Carolyn, her brother Mark, her sister-in-law Harriet and their family, and her many family of friends.
Carole was my friend for about 40 years, and she was the kind of friend that you could have fun with, like do the raccoon run in Lakeside, Ohio. She was the kind of friend who could tell me when I had made a colossal mistake in my career. She was the kind of friend who could see me in a video and say, we need to do something about those teeth. She was the kind of friend who I knew no matter what was going on in my life, no matter what time of day, no matter whether convenient or not, she would be there for me. And I think that kind of friendship, that kind of loyalty can only come from somebody who has in herself a deep, deep well of kindness, of generosity, of love. And Carole was that person. She was also a person of enormous courage. As a young woman, she chose to enter a profession that not many women at that time were entering. It was considered not quite the right role for a woman. She lived with and loved other women at a time when that was considered amoral or even perverted. She chose to live the life that she wanted to live. And because she did, she was a really important social change agent for all the rest of us. Because change in social attitudes doesn't happen only because someone famous reaches a pinnacle of success. Social change happens because the people we interact with on a daily basis, our neighbors, our friends, our family, show us that we can care and love somebody who has chosen to do something that society says we shouldn't. And we begin to change our attitudes about that. Because of Carole's courage, a lot of women today are able to live lives that were very, very, very hard to live when Carole started. She also showed that courage in the final years of her life when she was dealing with this terrible, terrible disease. And through it all, did not lose her interest in life, her sense of humor, her concern about others. My last visit with Carole, I took down my mask and I said, I think of you every time I use my water pick. And she smiled and I think loved the humor and the love in that humor. And then I looked into her eyes, which were so blue and so full of love. And I winked, and she winked back at me and smiled. And I keep that picture in my mind, and I always will, because I think it was her final gift to me. I think it was her saying, it's okay, and I'm okay. I miss her. I will always miss her.
Hello, my name is Bob Smythe, and I was honored to be a longtime friend and colleague of Carole's. As many of you know, Carole had a thriving practice in general dentistry in the D.C. area for many years, and Carolyn asked me to speak on behalf of the extensive network Carole cultivated in the dental community through her hard work and dedication to her patients. As a practicing endodontist a few blocks from Carole's office, I had the privilege of working closely with her, treating many of her patients that needed specialty care. This allowed me to observe firsthand the quality of Carole's work, and it was no surprise that her patients always raved about how wonderful and genuinely caring she was. Even when some moved further away, they continued to make the drive to her office because of her superior skills and that she treated each patient as she would care for a member of her own family. I also got to observe how well she ran her practice. It is a testament to her leadership that so many of her employees worked for her for much of their career. I need to mention Edna, Carole's chairside assistant for 35 years, who was invaluable and greatly appreciated. Furthermore, Carole was the consummate professional and actively participated in dental society meetings, serving on committees and supporting several free dental care clinics every year. These community commitments afforded doctors Walter Mazzella, Ralph Mazuka, and I, with the side benefit of getting to carpool with Carole. Times we fondly recall with easy conversation and laughter. Simply put, she was one of the best. On a personal note, I had the pleasure of seeing Carole's kindness, empathy, and willingness to go above and beyond extend outside her patient care. Carole was a gentle soul who loved Carolyn and her dogs dearly. That joy will be carried forward in honoring her legacy. Fair winds, dear friend.
As I've tried to capture Carole in words for today, I've kept in mind Abby's description. This is my opportunity to share the Carole I knew. We had 41 wonderful years together, and it's hard to capture someone you lived beside that long in words. One of the first things that comes to my mind is that with Carole, what you saw is what you got. We all knew the same Carole. She lived what she believed and was open, trusting, and honest. A member of her book group sent a card that had a picture of a young, early 20th century Western woman wearing pants and holding a rifle on the front, with the words, "Do no harm, but take no crap." And on the back, she wrote, "That girl was a pistol." The card makes me laugh out loud every time I see it. It captures her perfectly. Carole was a Texan. She was born in a small town, Cisco, in 1942, and lived with her mother, Lily, father, Jay, and brother, Mark. She loved her home and family and was proud of the fact that she lived her first 20 years in the bed, in the room, in the house she was born in. Carole graduated from Cisco High School and Cisco Junior College, then moved to Denton to go to Texas Woman's University in 1962. Through her work in a biology lab there, she got a job in a research lab at MD Anderson in Houston, and a few years later was recruited to work in a lab at Georgetown University, where she planned to get a doctoral degree. This was a huge leap for a young woman from Cisco in those days. To give you an idea of the enormity of this change, her mother opined, "Now I know how Aunt Iris felt when Uncle Herman went to Korea." Carole wrote letters home about how different things were here and what a big change it was, but clearly loved the challenge. Money was tight, but she economized in ways like doing research on frogs in the lab and bringing home the untouched frog legs for dinner. While Carole left Texas, she was always a Texan at heart. She lived in the DC area for most of her life, but always compared food and customs to Texas. She used Texas vocabulary and sayings. She cooked and ate Texas food, especially beef, and she looked at a lot of situations through a Texas-colored lens. She also had Texas-sized determination that helped make her the force she was. When Carole wanted to reach a goal, she didn't let much stop her. No knowledge of the North or the East? Come anyway. No money? Work in a lab or at a liquor store or hanging drywall or whatever it took to reach her goal. No advanced education? Decide what's possible and go for it. And always be true to yourself, kind to others, and graceful. Carole was a dentist. When research funds dried up for her lab work, Carole went to dental school, assuming she would get a DDS and continue on to do research. It turned out, though, that she loved dentistry. She loved the artistic and scientific challenges of the work, the opportunity to work with many different kinds of people, and the opportunity to run her own business. Carole graduated from Georgetown Dental School in 1976 as one of two women in a class of 140. One of her proudest moments in life was receiving a standing ovation when she walked across the stage to get her diploma. It was not an easy time for a woman to get into or through dental school. One had to have a strong sense of identity and a lot of determination to spend 4 years in a very male-dominated atmosphere. As there were few women dentists in DC when she began to practice, many dentists in town referred children and difficult patients to her. with the belief that as a woman, she was better equipped to treat them. The reality is that she was patient and accepting, able to meet patients where they were. She and her staff established a warm, welcoming atmosphere where each patient was treated as an individual. If you had trouble waiting for an appointment, she'd give you the first one in the morning. If you kept a diary of each of your teeth, she'd listen to what you'd written. If you had a young child, she'd let them ride up and down in the chair and sit on your lap during your treatment so that when they were old enough to be seen, they were not afraid. Many patients have written me beautiful notes about how they loved going to see her, even if they have otherwise never liked going to the dentist. One thing I've always remembered from when she retired is overhearing a man in his 60s who cried when she told him, saying, "You're the only person who remembers how much my mother loved irises." That didn't surprise me a bit. That was the kind of person she was and how much she cared. Carole was really smart and really witty. She used her keen intellect and sharp wit in every aspect of her life. She never met a challenge she didn't face. When one of her roommates moved out, she bought a hibachi for Carole, knowing that was the only way Carole could cook. As long as she could make meat, she would be okay. That Texas thing again. When we first got together, I had been a vegetarian for 7 years. Carole was sort of appalled and didn't know if she could even make breakfast for me if she couldn't use pork fat in the eggs. She decided that wasn't okay, and in 3 short years was inviting friends over to witness me eating meat for dinner. Carole decided she wanted to be a good cook and became a great one. She studied, experimented, and mastered many types of cooking. She learned to golf and found an instructor for me. She learned tennis and found an instructor for both of us. She improved her swimming and found classes for us and learned to dive, buying a snorkel mask for me. She learned about astronomy, photography, bridge, birds, and gardening. She learned to draw and paint. She had a great thirst for knowledge and an endless appetite for learning and adventure. We went zip lining and skydiving. We traveled around the tip of South America. We went to the Falklands, Belize, New Zealand, and so many other places together with friends and with family. And Carole was funny. She had a wicked sense of humor and an endless supply of zingers. She was tremendous fun to be with. We had 40 years of wonderful laughter. She brought out a sense of fun in others with her quick wit. Last year, we played categories every Saturday night on Zoom, and she didn't always participate because she was tired and unable to write answers anymore. But then she'd pipe up with an answer that had all of us in hysterics. She kept her sense of humor until the end, despite the toll her illness took. Carole faced her illness as she had faced the rest of her life, with determination, good humor, and grace. Soon after she was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, I went up to her study at home and saw a note hanging from her desk that read, "When the music changes, so does the dance." She found many new ways to dance in her last years. She began to paint with watercolors. She went to dance classes with other friends with Parkinson's disease, or Parkies as they called themselves. They danced on the Millennium Stage at the Kennedy Center. She took boxing classes with other Parkies. Shortly after she was diagnosed with multiple system atrophy, a very rare, difficult disease, she broke her hip. It healed quickly, but she lost ground and was never able to walk on her own again. The last 18 months were particularly hard for her, with many physical losses, but she stayed busy and engaged in the way she was able. During the pandemic, she exercised 7 days a week with a friend over Zoom. She continued to exercise as long as she could, and she painted often. We did more bird watching. She became more frank sometimes, but I think she enjoyed it. I cooked her dinner one night and asked her how it was. She shook her head and said, "Not good." But when I looked right at her, she had a little smile on her face. At the end of her book group one night, she asked the hostess what she was going to do with the leftover cookies. When we got The hostess asked her if she'd like to take them home, and she answered yes. When we got settled in the car, she looked at me and said gleefully, "I got cookies." The stakes changed. Her world got smaller, but she continued to find pleasure and laughter every day. In her last days, several days after she had stopped wanting to drink anything, she looked at me and spoke loudly and clearly for the first time in months. She declared, "I want a beer." I mentioned the narcotics she was taking, and she said it again, "I want a beer." She drank the whole beer through a straw, smiled, and went to sleep. She wanted it, she'd earned it, she got it, and she enjoyed it. And I loved watching her enjoy it. She was a beautiful, smart, funny woman who loved life and people passionately. I miss her madly, but was truly blessed to have so many wonderful years at her side.
I met Carole at Cedar Lane a little over 20 years ago. And over those years, I came to love so many things about her. There was something comforting about her presence. There was no drama, no artifice. She wasn't trying to impress anybody. She was just who she was. You'd never know she was an accomplished professional if you didn't ask. A rare find in Washington, D.C. She was one of the best listeners I've ever known. And she was woke before there was such a thing. But she wasn't trying to prove anything by it or wear it like a badge of honor. It was just who she was, a genuinely compassionate person. Carole was smart and sometimes had a wicked sense of humor. She could talk chemistry, investments, books, politics, cooking. She loved to grill. Some of my fondest memories are chatting with her while she was grilling on her back deck in Kensington. And she liked Oreos, a dentist who liked Oreos. Now that's something. But perhaps what most impressed me was the calm way that she just kept moving forward and living. I remember once visiting Carole after her diagnosis and asking her whether she felt angry. And she said, no, what good would that do? And I remember another time later in her illness when I was exercising with her. And by this time, she was only able to exercise while seated in a chair. We had exercised earlier that same week, and I told her that I was sore from our previous workout. And she smiled. It was a happy smile and maybe a little proud. And I took it to mean that she felt good that these exercises, although seated, were still real enough to make a friend sore. She was still living. And that's just who Carole was. She just kept moving forward, kept living. Surely, she encountered obstacles throughout her life, but she didn't let anger thwart her or settle for less. She became a dentist at a time when women faced barriers to doing so. She became a loving partner to Carolyn before that was acceptable. And she was diagnosed with a dreadful disease, but rather than get angry or give up, she just kept living. What grace. Carole, I've been fortunate to have been your friend. I will think of you often. I will miss you always, and I will carry a piece of you for the rest of my life.
A Funeral Plain Song from a Younger Woman to an Older Woman by Judy Grahn. I will be your mouth now to do your singing. Breath belongs to those who do the breathing. Warm life as it passes through your fingers, flares up in the very hands you will be leaving. You have left what is left, for the bond between women is a circle, we are together within it. I am your best, I am your kind of my kind, I am your wish of my wish, I am your breast of my breast, I am your mind of my mind, I am your flesh, I am your kind, I am your wish, kind of my kind, I am your best. Now you have left, you can be wherever the fire is when it blows itself out. Now you are a voice in any wind, I am a single wind. Now you are any source of a fire, I am a single fire. Wherever you go to, I will arrive. Whatever I have been, you will come back to. Wherever you leave off, I will inherit. Whatever I resurrect, you shall have it. You have right what is right, for the bond between women is returning. We are endlessly within it and endlessly apart within it. It is not finished. It will not be finished. I will be your heart now to do your loving. Love belongs to those who do the feeling. Life, as it stands so still along your fingers, beats in my hands. The hands I will, believing that you have become she who is not, any longer somewhere in particular. We are together in your stillness. You have wished us a bonded life. Love of my love, I am your breast. Arm of my arm, I am your strength. Breath of my breath, I am your foot. Thigh of my thigh, back of my back. Eye of my eye, beat of my beat. Kind of my kind, I am your best. When you were dead, I said you had gone to the mountain. The trees do not yet speak of you. A mountain, when it is no longer a mountain, goes to the sea. When the sea dies, it goes to the rain. When the rain dies, it goes to the grain. When the grain dies, it goes to the flesh. When the flesh dies, it goes to the mountain. Now you have left. You can wander. Will you tell whoever could listen? Tell all the voices who speak to younger women. Tell all the voices who speak to us when we need it, that the love between women is a circle and it is not finished. Wherever I go to, you will arrive. Whatever you have been, I will come back to. Wherever I leave off, you will inherit. Whatever I resurrect, we shall have it. We shall have it. We have right, and you have left what is left. I will take your part now to do your daring. Lots belong to those who do the sharing. I will be your fight now to do your winning. As the bond between women is beginning, in the middle, at the end, my first beloved, present friend, if I could die like the next rain, I'd call you by your mountain name and rain on you. Want of my want, I am your lust. Wave of my wave, I am your crest. Earth of my earth, I am your crust. May of my may, I am your must. Kind of my kind, I am your best. Tallest mountain, least mouse. Least mountain, tallest mouse. You have put your very breath upon mine. I shall wrap my entire fist around. I can touch any woman's lip to remember. We are together in my motion. You have wished us a bonded life.
Present to the grief in our own hearts and the beautiful reflections already spoken this day, as well as the love we all hold. Gathering up the words spoken by Carolyn, I invite you into a space of prayer with me as I share this blessing for the brokenhearted by Jan Richardson. Let us agree for now that we will not say that breaking makes us stronger or that it is better to have this pain than to have done without this love. Let us promise we will not tell ourselves time will heal the wound when every day our waking opens it anew. Perhaps now it can be enough to simply marvel at the mystery of how a heart so broken can go on beating, as if it were made for precisely this, as if it knows the only cure for love is more of it, as if it sees the heart's sole remedy for breaking is to love still, as if it trusts its own stubbornness and persistent pulse is the rhythm of a blessing we cannot begin to fathom, but will save us nonetheless. Thank be so. Amen. And blessed be.
When I in awesome wonder consider
I met Carole in 2013 when I was candidating at Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church. And this was at their home. And while I had been to their home while I was pre-candidating a few months before, Carolyn had banished Carole from meeting me because they did not want her to be meeting all the different candidates. Anyway, that's another story. But when Carole and I met, I felt an immediate connection and a sense of kinship. And my family and I were deeply welcomed by Carole and enfolded in her love immediately, that we felt a sense of belonging. And I was just deeply taken by the quiet dignity that she exuded, that also had in it a deep inner strength. And her wonderfully wicked sense of humor that accompanied a glint in her eye when she would respond with zingers. Her ability to articulate ideas that showed a keen intellect, a mind that was razor sharp, that could process and analyze and provide thoughtful analysis of various issues. Her love for spicy food that we both shared, and I'm talking habanero spicy, not your run-of-the-mill spicy food. And her love of dogs, which we both shared, especially her loving big dogs that I loved and we had, and her deep passion for justice and equity that she not only practiced in her life, but showed up for. Again, quietly, without demonstrating or, as Paul said, carrying it on her sleeve. A deep passion for gender justice, reproductive justice, racial justice, and environmental justice. And her deep faith in God. She considered herself to be a universalist, saying that God is love, that God, as love, will never let us go, let us down, or let us off the hook. These are some memories of Carole that I carry and cherish and hold dear to my heart as we celebrate her life and her legacy of love that we have all been blessed with. But one thing I do want to lift up that is particularly poignant to me, which is the love that Carole and Carolyn shared. It was a deep and abiding love, a quiet love, a fierce love that they both carried together for over 40 years and celebrated when we formally declared them married in 2013 at Cedar Lane. That again, I had the honor and privilege of co-officiating with my colleague, the Reverend Heather Janulis. Their love is in many ways a symbol of that deeper love, the divine love that Carole connected so deeply with and embodied in her life. The distinguished poet, Dr. Maya Angelou, in her eulogy to the great actor, playwright, and activist Ossie Davis said, "When great trees fall, rocks on distant hills shudder, and we are shocked into temporary loss of voice and clarity of mind. But then our memory comes to us again in the form of a spirit, and it is the spirit of our beloved. And we see our beloved standing before us as a light, as a beacon, indeed, as a way. And so it is with our beloved Carole, who in life and now in death rises as a beautiful light before us. As Carole rises before us as a light, a beacon, and a way, she points us toward a constant strengthening, a constant striving, a persevering, so characteristic of her that we heard so many times from Carolyn and her friends. It is, in the words of Dr. Maulana Karenga, a way of finding fire in the midst of water, water in the midst of rock, and a steady rock on which to stand in the midst of a world of raging waters and shifting sands. Indeed, it is a constant theme, a principle and practice in Carole's life and Carole's work, to refuse to be reduced to one's circumstances or willfully limited in life by obstacles and hurdles and restrictions or oppressions, and instead to break out of those cages and rise in freedom. Indeed, as Dr. Angelou says, you may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them. And we might encounter defeats, but we must never be defeated. Carole was, to quote another Dr. Angelou poem, a phenomenal woman who could seriously say, I created myself, but who would never say that because she was too humble and matter of fact. She was someone who was never boastful, nor took herself too seriously or too earnestly. Yet, she was one who, regardless of hurdles and restrictions, still rose and soared like a bird. One who was grateful to have been loved and to be loved now and to be able to love, because love liberates. One who embodied, when you get, you give, when you learn, you teach. And one who declared and lived with conviction that each of us comes from the Creator, trailing wisps of glory. And you should listen to yourself. And in that quietude, you might hear the voice of God. It is hard to believe that Carole is gone. But our memory of her and her warm and loving spirit, her gentle and gracious way of being, her indomitable courage, her sparkling wit and keen mind and steely determination, and her welcoming ways will live on in our hearts for as long as we do. We will tell our remembrances of Carole around the kitchen tables of our lives or around the grills of our lives, and in our quietude, hear her voice. We shall miss her wise counsel, her wit and her laughter, her creativity and her love of animals, of reading, her Texan spirit, her ability to connect and to engage, and above all, her unconditional love that she shared so freely and generously. And we also rejoice in the person she was: daughter, granddaughter, wife, sister, dentist, teacher, mentor, musician, co-religionist, and friend. Though we shall miss her, our grief is soothed by the richness of our living memories and her enduring presences in those she touched and transformed. My colleague, the Reverend Leslie Takahashi, wrote, in the daily weave of our lives, those who have died are still strong guiding threads. Theirs is the golden glimmer, or perhaps the brilliant red, or the melancholy blue. Still, they are part of the whole cloth of our lives. In the hour-to-hour rush of our daily tasks, they travel with us through something they taught us, which is now ours to do, through something they loved, which is now ours to carry out, through something we shared, which is now ours alone and yet not. In the minute-to-minute grasp of where we are, we remember the joys Carole gave us, which opened us up to hope, the sorrows we knew together, which taught us strength, the life shared, which is now ours to steward. In the second-to-second pulse of life, we sense Carole's spirit. This presence is too shy for naming, too amorphous for full knowing, and yet as real as the days we shared. She is more than remembered. She is memory itself. For what we love lives on in the way we be loved. Accompanies us through our life, her words and wisdom, our guide, her humor, our relief, her restless concern for the world, our change, and our charge. So, beloved friends, let us turn inward with gratitude and thanksgiving, giving thanks for Carole, in whose memory we gather here today. Let us give thanks for Carole's life, each of us recalling what she has meant to us. Let us give thanks for her love that centered the love of Carole and for the love of Carolyn and her family of friends for so many years. Let us give thanks for her friendship, her concern, her love and dedication that filled our lives. Let us be thankful that we and the world were blessed by her caring and love. May the love that we have for Carole remain strong and alive in each of us, for we know that love is the bridge that conquers even death, that love that will not let us go, let us down, nor let us off the hook. Let me close our time together with an ancient Hindu prayer that Carole loved whenever I chanted in services at Cedar Lane. I will be sharing this chant in Sanskrit and then in English. Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramayah Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So may it be. Blessed be. We love you, Carole. We miss you, and we will hold you in our hearts forever, throughout our lives. May your memory be a blessing. Friends, our time together is ending, and we will be reconvening memory for a Zoom reception the link to which is Friends Our Time Together in the chat. We hope to see you there so we can gather again. We will be reconvening and share more of our memories and stories about the link Carole. To which is go in peace, go making peace. Live gently, hope to see you love there, mightily. So gather again, bow to the mystery, and share more of our memories.
We are living in the great big dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power and some in pain. We can worship this ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. I am alone, I am searching, hungering for answers in my time. I am balanced at the brink of wisdom. I'm impatient to receive a sign. I move forward with my senses open. Imperfection, it be my crime. In humility, I will listen. We're all swimming to the other side. We are living beneath the great big dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power and some in pain. We can worship this ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. On this journey through thoughts and feelings, finding intuition, my head, my heart, I am gathering the tools together. I'm preparing to do my part. All of those who have come before me band together and be my guide. Loving lessons that I will follow. We're all swimming to the other side. We are living beneath the great big dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power and some in pain. We can worship this ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. All of the gifts we've been given to share have been with us since life's beginning, and we never noticed they were there. We can balance at the brink of wisdom, never recognizing that we've arrived. Loving spirits will live together. We're all swimming to the other side. We are living beneath the great big dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power and some in pain. We can worship this ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side.